I'm pleased and privileged to introduce Professor Bhautosh Indraguru, who is currently the Dean School of Languages and Professor of English in the Department of English and Other European Languages, Dr. Hari Singh Gaur, Central University, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. His areas of research interest include aesthetics and philosophy, comparative literature, literary theory, Indian poetics, philosophy of language, and 19th and 20th century British life and letters. Professor Guru has been engaged in teaching and research for about 25 years. He obtained his PhD degree from JNU New Delhi. He has been a fellow of American Studies Research Center, Hyderabad. He has published 4 books in the areas of Indology and comparative literary studies. Besides publishing these widely reviewed books, he has numerous research papers to his credit published in reputed national and international journals. Alongside, he has also been published in various conference proceedings and edited volumes. He has delivered invited lectures and plenary talks in numerous academic events around the country. Under Professor Guru's supervision, more than a dozen students have been awarded their PhDs, and I'm one among them. And there are a number of PhD scholars whose PhD is ongoing or in submission stage. He has successfully organized several conferences, refresher and orientation courses. Professor Guru has spearheaded a significant research project funded by the Indian Council of Social Science Research, New Delhi. During his long professional career, he has also held several administrative positions. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. In fact, introduction as such is hardly, the thing that we could bank upon. What Upanishads should like to state at once is, the things are needed to be without upadhi. Nothing is required to be advantageous in nature. Rather, it has to be predicated of all those things which are supposed to be advantageous. And to that extent only, we are supposed to come to terms with supreme consciousness that therefore is very much within us. So that is, something I should say, as a part of beginning of this lecture, but should like to thank Dr. Prabhashankar Dwivedi for having provided a kind of opportunity to me to speak to, the enlightened gathering. In fact, such an enlightened gathering, is one of the things we are always looking for, and rarely it happens. So, and it is also one of the, occasions where, we can understand that knowledge is capable of being, created, and knowledge is also capable of being imparted. That is there. A subject matter on which I should like to speak, is therefore related to knowledge, what we call knowledge, and the way, the knowledge has been conceived in Indian tradition, and the way in which, the same knowledge has through certain, mediums, certain instruments, certain, let us say instruments, has gone to the Western world, and is now a part and parcel of the Western, what we call Western discourse on the matter. So while we think of knowledge, and to that extent, we will have to be thinking in terms of the sources from which knowledge has come to be created. Then to that extent, we can begin with Vedas, and at a later stage, we have Upanishads, and still later, we have Brahma Sutra, and above all, we can understand that Srimad Bhagavad Gita is also there. In fact, these 4 grand, philosophical scriptures or scriptural, philosophies, we can understand, which have been expounded in these days, become, in a way, foundation of all the subsequent and succeeding discourses we can understand to have been created in other areas of other corners of human civilization. But in this particular deliberation on the matter, I should like to stick to Upanishads primarily, and would precisely make an effort to establish the thesis that ultimately, the Western philosophy and Western aesthetics we have at present have come to be
all over
constructed,
Tamil Nadu.
come to be established on account of, great influence which Upanishads have exercised. Now, you see, thinking of human existence in this world, we can understand that ultimately, and it would be held later in our discourse on the matter, deliberation on the matter, that you see, Brahm, who is held to be the creator, of this universe, is in fact, created this world, has fashioned forth this world after his own image. And to that extent, we will understand that since, each of us has been fashioned forth after the image of Brahma, we can understand that there is a kind of inner urge, and that is so natural, to meet the creator. So this kind of adequacy of external to internal or internal to internal, which is always issued in the form of an evolution, a growth, development, and expansion of an experience, characterizes the very nature of philosophy we can have, in our own tradition. And to that extent, when Upanishads would say, in the form of a Mahavakya, the grand aphorism, Tamso ma Jyotirgamay, Asado ma Satgamay. Then we can at once understand that they are, in a way distinguishing, what we call paramarthik, and what in the second place, we would like to call vyavaharik, So paramarthik, that is spiritual, and that is transcendental, that is divine, and vyavaharik, that is apparent, that is, empirical in nature, where we understand that illusions are created, and sensations are created, and also, experiences, are deriving from the material objects of this world, are created. They precisely, these rather, these two states of existence, are precisely what later in the Western world, we would understand in terms of appearance and reality. That is there. But the most important point, we can note right at the beginning of our deliberation on the matter is that, you see, there is an inner urge, in each of us, in each of the human beings, to grow, to develop, to expand, and to ultimately burst forth, so much so that, it could become a part and parcel of the supreme consciousness. So such an effect and such a course, and such a detour, to become a part of evolution, precisely, defines the nature of philosophy, that had been, in our tradition, and at a later stage, that went to the Western world from our own tradition. Now, you see, I should like to make mention, of two representative observations, that would, in a way, define the very nature of, the philosophical debates, relating to, the experience. Sometimes, you see, it would be a little pertinent on our part to distinguish between experience, and fact. When we say there is an experience and there is also, the realization of the experience, then by that we mean, there is a kind of, you see, opportunity, to introduce ourselves to the condition of completeness and totality by having so successfully recreated ourselves, into the experience. While on the other hand, when we speak of fact, so then we precisely make a reference to certain objective, situations and conditions which are intellectually held and intellectually comprehended, where, we limit, all the different situations of progress, growth, and development of experience to certain datum, certain analysis. So in one, there is a possibility of wholesome realization, and in the other, there is also, a possibility of incomplete realization when, you see, there is a fact If knowledge becomes a fact, an objective, you see, situation, a datum for the matter of that, then we understand that, it is all the more coming to be limited on certain accounts. And when it is an experience, then we understand that, it is entering into what we call Sachidanand, Sat Chit and Anand, truth, consciousness, and bliss, without having, any boundaries being fixed for such a realization. So philosophical debates and philosophical discourses, Eastern or Western, precisely begin on this particular seminal note, wherein we have the and relying on these authority, Nachiketa, who is now a part of yajna that is being performed by his father, Vrajashrava, and when he understands that the cows which are being given, are the cows which should not have been given, then at once he would say, and I should like to read out the observation, because it is characteristic of Indian philosophy, and it has to be understood, to some extent. Pitodak, he would say, Pitodak Jagad तृण दुग्ध दोह निरिंद्रिय आनंद नाम ते लोकस तन से गच्छत त ददात. Means, you see, the cows which are being given, are of no use and no consequence, and to that extent, their water drunk, their grass eaten, their milk milled, their strength is spent, joyless, and so on and so forth. So then the question arises, why are you giving, away these cows, to Brahmins, isn't it sinful, to have been, in a position to give away, such cows which are of no use precisely. So what is important, about this observation on the matter is that, there is a kind of innocence, and there is a kind of what we call balya bhav, and the same innocence and same balya bhav would precisely, become a characteristic note of Indian philosophy, and at once the reign of experience, is become, one of the things we can understand. Later, in the 17th century, one of the theological, you see, let us say, more theological and less literary work of art written by John Bunyan, entitled Pilgrim's Progress, from this world to that which is to come. Christian, happens to be a character, and he would say, seeing the imminent doom that would befall. So seeing such a catastrophe, calamity that would come, he would at once say, I seek inheritance, incorruptible, undefiled, and that which fadeth not away. So we can understand, his yearning, Christians are yearnings, in Pilgrim's Progress. And there precisely, once again, he is returning to the fact that beyond, the facts, you see, God, when God is a fact, but then there is an impossibility of coming to terms with, totality. So to that extent, he would say, I seek inheritance, incorruptible, undefiled, and that which fadeth not away. And precisely we can understand that he is thinking in terms of Brahm, who is the supreme consciousness, while, Brahm is rendered, into supreme consciousness, then at once we can understand that, it is an entity that is within, it is something, within us, and it is to be realized. So these are, the precisely the two characteristic notes, and we can bank on these notes and proceed further, in the direction of realization. And to that extent, we can understand at once that Upanishads, primarily, consider the fact that, there is, the existence of ultimate reality in the form of Brahm, which is capable of being known, and once we are in a position to know that ultimate reality, that exists in the form of Brahm, we have arrived at, the achievement of essential unity, unity by that, it would be meant that all the different categories of human identity and existence, have now, shown themselves, off from, or divested rather, all the different categories of human existence are now divested, of the contradictions, of the multiplicities, and to that extent, they are now rendered, innocent, and they are now rendered pure, and to that extent, once again, unity has been achieved, so from plural experiences, ultimately, one moves to singularity of experience, and Upanishads, precisely would state this fact every now and then. In fact, the very conception of Brahm, in the form of one that is without form, and the one that is with form, is one of the greatest achievements, of philosophical debates on the matter, in having said that supreme consciousness, is formless in the first place, and the same supreme consciousness, is formed in the second place, it would be, come to be rather fascinating, to address ourselves to such a situation. While Upanishads say that Brahm is formless, then precisely, they mean that, it is bereft of all the different qualities, it is bereft of all the, attributes, so on and so forth, even otherwise manifestation and illustration, but it is bereft of qualities only, in relation to the fact that it is full of qualities. So to that extent, it is formed, when it is full of qualities, it is form, and when it is bereft of qualities, it is formless. But it is a kind of simultaneity, that is something to be understood, and while we say, that it is full of qualities, then we understand that it is capable of creating the universe, and as and when, it understands, the exigency of creation, need and necessity, of creation, it proceeds further, to create this world. But having created, once again, it returns to its originary position, but through its instruments, through its agencies, in a way, it goes on, to keep up its identity, and to that extent, it is always a kind of non-participant observer. Atma, therefore, could be held to be one of the instruments, categories, or one of the orders of reality, and then in the next place, Ishwar, could also be God, whom we call God. And in the third place, Hiranyagarbha, and in the fourth place, Vashvanar, the manifesting spirit, creative spirit, that is Hiranyagarbha, and manifesting spirit, that is Vashvanar, could be held to be some of the orders of reality, through which the supreme is executed, so this is, something remarkable, and something of great consequence, and what is of consequence, here is the fact that only through this world, it would be possible, for us to reach the other world. Only through, our acquaintance, greater, wider, and larger acquaintance with, the Brahma that is formed, or for the matter of that, the effect of Brahma that is held in the creation of this world. So we should negotiate with this world, we should interact with this world, and we should engage, with this world. And having become part and parcel of this world, we can move to the other world. This is the celebrated, ethos of Indian philosophy, and those, who criticize, Indian philosophy being otherworldly, are perhaps those, who have never understood, the emphasis which are time and being, created. In fact, the problem is related to the correct interpretation, and in order to arrive at correct interpretation, one should have, an acquaintance, with the language, Sanskrit, in which, these grand, texts have come to be created. So this is the thing, that is to be understood. It is, in the first place, Indian philosophy is empirical, hard empirical, I should like to state with authority and conviction. And in the second place, it is spiritual or transcendental, so on and so forth. So you see, what is needed to be taken up for examination, is our ability to have a kind of, recreation into this world, at later stage movement to the other world. This, therefore, is something, we can understand being the part of, our examination of the matter. And while we proceed to the reading of Plato, we will have the opportunity of understanding, the fact that he also, relying on the authority of Upanishads, he would first examine, the contradictions and multiplicities of this world, and would come to the conclusion that, so long as there are sensations, so long as there are illusions, so long as there are in a way, the creation, of sensations and illusions, and destruction, sensations are created, and sensations are destroyed, and so long as, human beings are indulgent, so long as human beings are infatuated, it would be little impossible, on their parts to bring about organization, precision, symmetry, or for the matter of that, convergence, into something, that he would like to state, being one. All is one, says Plato, and the many are not. This is straightway, a derivation, he achieves, on account of the influence, the historical conditions, which enable us to state, the fact of influence with great authority, is therefore, due upon our understanding, of the fact that Vedas, through Iran, through Persia rather, went to the Western world, and in fact,
முடிஞ்சு போச்சு சார். போறதுன்னா நீ நவம்பர்ல வா, டிசம்பர்ல வா.
So that is there, and that has to be taken up for examination. Now, you see, I was talking of Plato, who understands that ultimately, this world comes to be as a world that is dross in nature, unless and until, we have the ability to master over, this world. And mastering, this world would precisely consist in our ability to organize, and render, ourselves into the symmetrical, form of entities, and then only, we can move to the soul, to the condition of, soul, to the existence of soul, and in Plato, once again, we would understand that soul, that is stated to be eternal, everlasting, or immortal, is a fact, that we can understand in terms of autonomy, soul is eternal, soul is immortal only to the extent that, it is autonomous in nature, existing on account of itself, there is nothing relative, so we can equate the observation with Brahma, being formless and Brahma being formed, and then we can, at once proceed to say, in fact, the whole idea of Sachidanand, Sat, Chit and Anand, truth, consciousnness, and bliss, in fact, is something, that would enable us to understand, the whole situation, Brahm, that is foundation, at bottom, of everything. And to that extent, it is formless, and to that extent also, it is knower of knowing, it is seer of seeing, it is hearer of hearing, so not the eyes, that see, rather the person, who is inside the eyes, and because of whom, we are in a position to see. So Platonic debate, are, you see, precisely, directed upon, you see, the finding, in a way, Western equivalents, for the thoughts and ideas, contained and embodied upon Upanishads. Now while we move to Aristotle, we could understand the same situation, and precisely Aristotle, in his discourses on the matter, would enable us to understand the difference between, particularity, what is particular and what is actual, and there once again, we can understand that he is banking upon the idea that, ultimately, the essence is tamso ma jyotirgama, the world is all about tamas. So while he speaks of, particularity, he would precisely, understand the fact that, the human beings, are human beings, only to the extent that, they are existential beings, and existential beings are existential beings because they are incapable of performing the circular motion, and that circular motion, celebrated circular motion that doesn't seem to be coming to an end, or for the matter of that, which never comes to an end, is a motion only to be performed, capable of being performed by, the entity, that is fully rational in nature. And that entity, has been given the name of, soul by Aristotle, but precisely, in terms of categories, he would bring to our contemplation and appreciation, are precisely the categories which you should like to name. Particular, particular is existence, and existence, is a place where nothing, existence is a place where nothing is singular, everything is plural, everything is multiple in nature, and everything is contradictory in nature, because it is held always in the contents, and no sooner than, the contents acquire the, figuration of a form, they tend to become, they proceed to become actual, and this distinction between particular in the first place and actual in the second place is a distinction we can precisely attribute to tamas, tamas, that is darkness, and that is also despondency, and that is also, multiplicity, and for the matter of that, state of ignorance, state of ignorance, whose cause is, conflict, and conflict precisely, is created because, there isn't any transformation so far into singular, into whole, still we are having a division, into units and parts, and still, we haven't achieved, the status of being one, singular, undivided whole, So Aristotle, precisely means, what, in Upanishad we have, in the form of, tamso ma jyotirgama, asado ma sadgama, from darkness to light, and light, for the matter of that, is knowledge, knowledge, therefore, is something that brings unity, and unity something, that enables us to move from, gross to subtle, and to that extent, we are now divested, of contradictions and multiplicity. So Aristotle, precisely later, we will come to a kind of extensive discussion on the matter. I am, at this stage introducing, myself to the topic, that I have taken up for examination. Plotinus, while we move further, and come to Plotinus, so then we understand that, he comes to define, soul, which he would equate with the idea of beauty, and the very idea of soul or beauty, would come to be defined in terms of intellectual principle, and intellectual principle, is therefore, something wherein, we have a clarity of distinction between, the experience that governs the contradiction, or the thinking, that enables us to, retain, the kind of autonomy. Because in his opinion, thinking doesn't undergo as such any division, whereas, experience is capable of being divided, So thinking exists in the form of a substance, whereas, experience we could understand, as it is having an existence in the form of compound, and this distinction between, substance and compound, would become the basis of the philosophy of Spinoza, Descartes and Leibniz later, of course, But what is important, at this stage is to know, that it is intellectual principle, in Brahma Sutra, right at the beginning, the aphorism is established wherein it is stated, that athato Brahma jigyasha, So then, two things are very important, having, considering Brahma being a fact of inquisition, and proceeding, to understand Brahm, being a fact of inquisition, So when we proceed to, have a comprehension of Brahm, we understand that our thinking, the way in which we think, is expected to be very, very large, because you see, Brahm could be understood only in its continuity. Tatatu samanvaya, that therefore is the second important aphorism that will be established in, Brahma Sutra, precisely explaining the nature of Brahma, continuity therefore, so from formless to formed, there is a kind of continuity from other world to this world, there is a kind of continuity, and it is only our thinking, Now you see, thinking, being an intellectual principle is something, that at once, invites our attention, and enables us to return to, some of the modern poets of the Western world, wherein, we can pick up, for example, W.B. Yeats, who would state in Sailing to Byzantium, with great authority and conviction. And it is where, the rendering of Upanishads, he would say, therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium, This is something, and at once we can equate the idea with Tamsoma Jyotirgama, holy city of Byzantium, that is very important. And in the second place, he would also say, consume my heart away sick with desire. It knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity, So on the one hand, he would speak of heart, and in the second place, he would speak of artifice of eternity. Gather me into, and gathering is very important. This is once again, an emphasis that, Plotinus would create, in having spoken of, soul being intellectual principle, beauty being intellectual principle, So that is there. And in the second place, we would understand Upanishads, I would speak of the progression of, Brahma from form to formless, that is of great consequence. So consume my heart away sick with desire, it knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity, So emphasis on organization, who is capable of understanding Brahma, That therefore is the question, that is being taken up by Brahma Sutra. And to that extent, at once, the aphorism would be established, athato Brahma jigyasha. Efforts, we can make, but efforts would be due upon two things, the first would be, our ability to understand tattu samanvayat, continuity, they would say continuity is the essence. And in the second place, they would also say anandamayo abhyasat, bliss, harmony for the matter of that, that is the sense. So when Plotinus, would state that soul is intellectual principle, he is speaking, on behalf of, Upanishads and Brahma Sutra, and he is speaking of the achievement, our ability to achieve, harmony, our ability to achieve this bliss, anand, you see, then only, there would be the possibility, of correct and true understanding, or evolution into soul would be a matter, to be left to this situation. So, that is something, we can understand. Now, while we move further, and come to Descartes, who could be held to be you see, the progenitor, you know, of the modern Western philosophy. And what Descartes says, you know, in fact is important, you know, in view of the fact that he is, you know, ennobling, canonizing for the matter of that, you know, the cause of thinking, you know, because in him, you know, there is the consideration of the fact that thinking, you know, is having, you know, a kind of autonomy about itself, you know, whereas experience, you know, always undergoes, you know, a division. So we can rely on the authority of thinking, but we cannot afford to rely on the authority of experience, you know, and to that extent, what he establishes, you know, in the form of I think, thus I am, or I think, therefore I am, you know, is fundamental to the you see, acceptance of the fact that, you know, there is a kind of completeness and you see, totality, you know, about thinking, whereas, you know, the same completeness, you know, cannot be held in terms of experience, you know. So I think, therefore I am, but he would further qualify, you know, the observation by saying I'm capable of thinking only to the extent that I am capable of doubting over the state of, you know, the things, the nature of things, you know, or for the matter of that state of existence, so on and so forth, you know. So that is celebrated, you know, observation, you know, and in Brihad Aranyak Upanishad, you know, towards the end, you know, we have an observation that precisely, you know, is a forerunner, you know, to the observation made by, you see, Descartes, you know, where, you know, the sages, you know, are now praying, you know, for a liberation, you know, but what kind of liberation, what manner of liberation? So then, you know, the thing is that they should like to be liberated, you know, on account of their intellection, you know, thinking, knowledge, you know, not on account of anything else, you know. And the same yearning we can understand we have in respect of, you see, uh, W.B. Yeats, you know, or even, you see, in all the different dramas written by William Shakespeare, we can understand that same emphasis, you know, as time and again being created, you know. So we will first take into consideration, you know, what has been stated, you know, towards the end of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and then we will proceed to the consideration of Descartesian, you know, manner of interpreting this situation, you know. So sages are now saying, Vayur anilam amritam athedam bhasmantam shariram krito ismar, kritam ismar, kritam ismar. Now look at the emphasis, you know, and then, you know, you would be startled, you know, at the, I mean, you see the simplicity, but profundity at the same time of the observation, you know. Vayur anilam amritam athedam. Ultimately, you know, the body is organic in nature, you know, and today or tomorrow or day after tomorrow, you know, it shall be dissolved, you know, into those sources, you know, from which, you know, it has been created. So Vayur anilam amritam athedam bhasmantam shariram, you know. So that therefore is the prayer, you know, that they are making, you know, to the divine, you know, the supreme, in a way, consciousness for you see, having, you see, a grant of immortality and eternity, and therefore they would say, krito ismar, kritam ismar, you know, knowledge, you know, give us that brand of knowledge, that version of thinking, thought, idea, you know, on account of which, you know, we will be liberated, you know, from this world. And while we think of knowledge, thinking, you know, so on, ismar, you know, krito ismar, kritam ismar, you know, then at once, you know, we can move to Descartes, you know, and wherein, you know, we will understand that I think, therefore I am, you know, is something that bears on, you know, his particular reading and understanding. One of the facts, you know, that has been not uh, mentioned with, you see, conviction and courage is the fact that each of the great Western thinkers, you know, had also been simultaneously, you know, a great student of Sanskrit, you know, and to that extent, it would be not far-fetched, you know, to say that they read Sanskrit, you know, and since Sanskrit, you know, is in a way, you know, is having, the infallible text, it would not be wrong, to state right at once, that Vedas, and Upanishads and Brahma Sutra and Srimad Bhagavad Gita are those texts, which are infallible, in nature, because, they exist right at the center of the time, So that is very important. So I think, therefore, I am, and I can understand that I am capable of thinking only to the extent to which I can doubt over the nature of the thing, state of the thing. So that is there, and that is very important, Now, you see, in the next place, we can, just to move over to, the philosophies, which come to be expounded, by Leibniz, by Spinoza, a little later, and then we can understand that Leibniz, would speak of monads, and he would understand that monads are those entities, which are created out of, the substance, and since substance, is atom, an atom, therefore, is something that is incapable of being divided, brought to any division, and to that extent, he would understand that, that the foundation of, the reality, what we call ultimate reality, is not the compound, compound that is therefore the world of appearance. And this distinction between tamas, which was in the first place, held in Upanishad, the distinction between tamas and jyoti, is also, the distinction, that would be most celebrated, and pontifical in the philosophy of, both Spinoza, and Leibniz. So Leibniz would speak of, substance, that exists in the form of monad, but he would further, understand that soul, and therefore the God, and to that extent the supreme. So he would, just go by the same route, through which Upanishads, have gone by, and he would say that there is one single monad, that rules over all the other monads. And then we can come to the understanding of the fact that Brahm, who exists in the form of supreme consciousness, is in fact, the ruler, of the whole universe, something that Leibniz would say in monadology, and other writings. Time and again he would state this fact, And then in Spinoza, we can understand that he distinguishes, between passion and reason, and he would understand that ultimately, the passion, is detrimental to, our achievement of reality, it is only through reason, we would be in a position, to achieve that reality, something, that would straightway come from, the the debate, into which Shwetaketu, has launched himself, wherein, the other Mahavakya, would find a great meaning, in which it is said, Tat Tvam Asi, that art thou, the remarkable observation, Tat Tvam Asi, that art thou, not this passion, not this emotion, not this sensation, not this illusion, not this delusion, or not this world, and so on and so forth, not this body, but it is, the supreme, it is the light that doesn't extinguish at any point of time, that therefore is reality, so the point is so well understood by Spinoza, while he would distinguish between passion, and therefore he would say, in his ethics, that God, should not be loved with passion, rather God must be loved with reason, and the distinction between passion and reason, and later, he would come to the conclusion, by saying that all determination is negation, and in having said, determination, in having spoken of determination and negation, at once he would proceed to examine the fact that, something that is capable of being determined, is of this world only, material world or world of appearance, which is being created, which is being destroyed, once again created, once again destroyed, but there is something, that exists in the form of thinking thing. In both Leibniz and Spinoza, we understand that emphasis on God being a thinking thing, this is the most candid, portion of the observations made by Leibniz and Spinoza, wherein they would say that God is a thinking thing, and this thinking thing is precisely what we can understand in terms of Tatatvam asi, Tatatvam asi, that art thou, and the distinction between this and that, would therefore be a remarkable distinction, that would appear in most of the Western writings, since Plato, this and that art thou, Tatatvam asi, in fact, while we move, further into our readings of Upanishads, then we understand that, in other places, we have, for example, in one of the places, where cosmic dance, is being spoken of, celebration at the achievement of the knowledge, that would ensure, one's progress, into the supreme, So there, the divine voice would at once state, aham annam, aham annada, aham asmi prathmaja rathasya nabha, so we can just understand, this world and that world, aham annam, aham annada, aham asmi prathmaja rathasya nabha, so the distinction is being made, and distinction is also being understood, annada, and aham asmi prathmaja, first, even before the gods, I am at the center, even before the gods, center of immortality, so Brahm, achievement of Brahm, is capable of bringing such a realization, and that is, the bliss Anand. And in the philosophy of Leibniz and Spinoza, we can understand that even otherwise, the emphasis would become more pragmatic while we move little later, and understand Immanuel Kant, and Hegel, Hegel would therefore, speak of supreme consciousness, spirit, of course, in the form of, spirit, wherein, we have idea, we have knowledge, wherein we have unity, and wherein we have dialectic, so that therefore is the absolute. Spirit, therefore, in Hegelian understanding, is the absolute, it is also the dialectic, because it creates at once. So at once, spirit is one such occasion, or rather one such consummation of achievement, in terms of thought and experience, wherein, we have absolute or totality, that by and large is undefiled in nature, that cannot be defiled, so that therefore, idea ultimately, what matters most in Hegel is the conception of idea, and that he would equate with, the historical absolute, or unity, so on and so forth, achievement of knowledge, on account of which we are enabled, to live in this world, and so successfully respond to the all the processes of this world, So while in Upanishad, we read aham annam, aham annada, aham asmi pratmaja, precisely we are, being made to understand this account of progress and development and evolution, which is central to the conception of Hegel, because he would also, precisely create a background, for the achievement of, we can understand, this spirit or unity, or dialectic, by having, evolved from unconscious to conscious, unconscious to formless Brahm, and formed Brahm. Precisely, it is a kind of a German interpretation we can understand, Hegel is giving to, the idea of formless and formed, by having spoken of progression from, unconscious to conscious. When unconscious is successfully, transmogrified into conscious, then we understand that, the unity is created, and that becomes our basis, of understanding this world, approaching, a kind of, a conviction in relation to negotiating, interacting this world, So that is so central to the philosophy of, Hegel. And in Upanishad, once again, we understand. In fact, while we are thinking of these situations, it would be little pertinent, to once again return to Upanishad and say that, emphasis is always on the need of experience to grow. So therefore, experience, should grow through certain stages. And one of the earliest stages has been of this world. And then there is the second stage, that is pran, pran means consciousness, we have, first observation, and observation is recreated into consciousness, then we have manas, we start cognizing, and then you see, beyond manas, we have a vigyan, systematic, organization of all, everything, we have about ourselves. And finally, it is all recreated into anand. Anand is a stage of unity, once we achieve unity, and that is also the transcendence, So we have transcendence, in the first place in this world, and having transcended, and the idea of transcendence would therefore be our, most accurate and most exact response, to the life of this world, to the manners of this world, and to the facts and processes of this world, So first requirement, is to be empirical, and what is to be mastered in the first place is experience of this world, and having done, and therefore, it all begins on a note of, the canonization of An, you see, and then we have Pran, and then we have Manas, and then we have Vigyan, and finally, we have Anand. So this therefore, is something that would once again, become a basis of, the observation, being made by Hegel. And while we move to, Immanuel Kant, and we proceed to understand, how does he establish, a distinction between a priori, and a posteriori, and would also understand that, there has to be a kind of simultaneity, of a priori and a posteriori, because completely, a priori and completely or fully a posteriori, would therefore be the impossibilities, we can understand, that would be held in relation to our, comprehension of the matter. It would be impossible almost entirely, to be completely a priori or completely a posteriori, completely transcendental and completely material, because ultimately, whatever is formed, is in fact due upon whatever is formless, and whatever is formless, therefore is always bearing on, whatever is formed. So there is a kind of simultaneity, in as much as we understand that, past is simultaneous with present, and present is simultaneous with future. And accordingly, we also understand that past, present, and future, are therefore having a kind of complementarity, having a kind of simultaneity about themselves, So that is in Kantian distinction, and therefore he would define, beauty, what he would call beauty, but then he would proceed to say that beauty is, a taste, and this taste, is something, of the sort of disinterested, involvement, So this therefore, is something that completes the process of evolution, and accordingly, it enables one, to truly, beauty could always be, responded through certain subjective situations, But when we are into the beauty, then it becomes completely intuitive, So this is something I stated right at the beginning, where, I said, that experience, therefore cannot afford to be an objective situation, an objective datum, whereupon, we have the convenience of bringing, experience to some kind of analysis, because it is not a fact, it is not a fact. It is always open to a kind of realization, in the process of realization, in yoga system of Indian philosophy, would be held in, samadhi, samadhi, so that is, profoundest possible concentration, some of the Western, critics would say that it is mystical, and we will also say, that it is mystical, but this mysticism, is very authoritative in nature, and everything, that is best in the life of a man, life of a human being or human beings of this world is therefore mystical in nature. So ultimately, when Immanuel Kant, will have the authority of proving the contention, that taste, that is the basis of disinterested, involvement into the object on account of the object. And that is assuredly, the basis of beauty, saundarya, shringar. So there, we have the opportunity, to understand the situation, being pertinent to these facts, So Kant, has precisely, the same. Now you see beyond Kant, while we move to the modern, European philosophy, one of the earliest of modern European philosophers, had been Bradley, So Bradley's, thesis, and one of the other things, which I didn't make mention, about Immanuel Kant, had been the idea, that he straightway, borrowed from Upanishads, and each of the ideas ultimately became, the titles that he, prefixed for two celebrated books, he wrote, for example, he would say critique, he would entitle, one of the earliest of his books being Critique of Pure Reason, and the second book, came to be entitled Critique of Judgment, so each therefore, is capable of being compared, with Brahm, So while we, Athato Brahma Jigyasha, just compare, Critique of Pure Reason, on the one hand, and Athato Brahma Jigyasha, on the other. So there, you would understand that is an opportunity, to understand the nature of influence, while you proceed to inquire into, the whole, state of existence of something, that we have called formless, and that is the subject matter of a critique of pure reason, and once again, the critique of judgment, wherein, he would expound his treatises on, beauty, sublime, so on and so forth. So that also bears on, the Upanishadic situation, because a reading of Sanskrit, had been, the most profoundest of vocations in Germany, in those days in which, Schopenhauer, Kant, and Hegel, lived, and still, very much, one of the profoundest of vocations, So now let us move to, one of the earliest of modern, European philosophers whose name is Bradley, and straightway, he would write a treatise on appearance and reality. That is also, the title of his book. And therein, he would proceed to distinguish, between that, he would categorize, pronominal references in the form of that and what, and would proceed to equate, that, with appearance, and what with reality, While we speak of that, then there, we understand that, we are referring to, something. that is to some extent, very subjective in nature, but while we speak of what, then we are more keen, more focused on, the thought content, the attributes of thinking, or to that extent, we are rationalizing, ratiocinating, we are according some kind of, rational, configuration to the situation, but this distinction between that and what, is once again, a distinction that is always open to our examination, in respect of, tamsoma jyotirgamaya, asudoma, mortality to immortality, and you see, darkness to light, while there is an opportunity is there because urge is there, so to that extent, even Bradley, is not far from, the reign of influence, that Upanishads, could so successfully exercise, on all the succeeding philosophers. Now, you see, when we come to, the truly modern, whom we call modern Western philosophers, so there, Upanishads would become very pervasive, and solemnly, we can understand that at once we are in a position to prove, the whole manner of influence. And here, there are three philosophers, First is Heidegger, and in the second place, we have Husserl, Heidegger, Husserl, and we can also, understand that Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Bergson, and others, would constitute the other group of modern European philosophers, Western philosopher. But primarily, while we look into the philosophies of Martin Heidegger and Edmund Husserl, ultimately we come to understand that, world itself is a fact, and it is only on account of this world that there is a possibility of being liberated. And in order to be liberated, ultimately what one needs to do, relying on the authority of both Husserl and Heidegger, even Sartre, I really forgot to make mention of Sartre. We can understand that, we should negotiate with this world. We should interact with this world, and having negotiated and interacted, with this world, we can become part and parcel, all the different, conditions, events, and circumstances, which normally do not invite any attention, would therefore be very meaningful in relation to our approach to apprehend this sensation, which are due upon them. And having successfully apprehended these sensations, we can proceed to comprehend the sensation. And to that extent, Heidegger would replace the conventional term being, and he would replace it by Dasein, that therefore is a stroke of genius, and Dasein would therefore, be one, who would truly explain the world, as such is something, we would equate with manifestation, with illustration, with appearance, it appears in images, and images are only capable of being apprehended through our sensations, and the sensations, are given to us. And likewise, we are of necessity, be in a position to be square with the sensation. In Edmund Husserl, once again, noemic and noetic, two categorizations, he would embark upon, would therefore, be something related to our ability. For example, there is a pen. Then what is needed is that, we should write with the pen, and having written, we should successfully be in a position to read out whatever we have written. And to that extent, there would be the completeness of the sensation, that is created on account of a pen, on account of a pencil, chair, table, whatever objects we have, if let us say, there is a cup of tea, but then it has to be drunk, with great taste, and it must be capable of, bringing to us great state of enjoyment. And to that extent, the existence of tea, as such would be so well meant, so well apprehended, and so well comprehended. Sartre, would develop two categories: in itself and for itself, and these two categories, would therefore be, the precise ways in he would explain, the existence of world exists, So then question arises, how does it exist? Then he would say, it exists in itself, to be able to see all the different objects of this world, being the objects as they are, and then they exist on account of being for itself, So these are, in fact, the exhortations, made to us to completely realize if there is money, so then money, is needed to be appropriated judiciously, For example, inside a restaurant, what is pertinent and what is needed, that you should spend some money, on the different choices in terms of a menu, that you would be making. And having made that kind of judicious appropriation of money, you would be in a position to satisfy, yourself. So that therefore, is the event and occasion of liberation, we can understand. So you see, thinking of these categories and returning once again to Upanishads, wherein two propositions, Mahavakyas once again, become relevant to our, discussions, wherein, it is said, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm. Look, this is very important. And the second is Aham Brahma Asmi, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm, the first, and Aham Brahma Asmi, Brahm is everywhere, and to that extent, even within me, I can understand that Brahm is, in existence. Supreme consciousness, exists, in all the different objects of this world, which we recognize or which we do not recognize. But, Brahm exists, all along, all through, pervasive, it is all encompassing, in nature. If Brahm exists, say, for example, in a tree, in a flower, in a leaf of a tree, and let us say in the sky, in the stars, which twinkle, in the moon, that is luminous in the night, or the sun that is radiant in a day, the passage of water, therefore, by the river, or the water in the pond, ocean for the matter of that, mountains, and all the different objects of this world, situations even. So everywhere we can understand, there is the existence of Brahm, So then what is pertinent is that we must proceed to realize fully and completely, So while you see Heidegger, or Edmund Husserl, or Sartre, laying emphasis, say for example, and here, the definition, of Dasein, proposed by a being, being is a conventional term, and Dasein is, the term that Martin Heidegger has coined, and he would define Dasein, by saying that worldhood of the world, Dasein is a knowledge, and knowledge therefore is the worldhood of the world, and worldhood of the world is worldness of the world, So unless and until you have drunk the water, unless and until you have drunk the tea, unless and until you have so successfully with great satisfaction written, down something with the help of a pen, pencil, so on and so forth, you cannot understand, what this worldhood is all about. Everything exists or meaningful in this world only on account of the fact that it is having hood, about itself. It is having ness about itself, So that is to be completely, realized, understood. Transformation, transmutation, and transmogrification, would therefore be three meaningful stages, in which we can proceed to realize. But realization has to be, and realization is always, on account of the instinct, that we are having, at our own behest, So while you see in Upanishads, we have the aphorism that says, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm, and on the other hand, while we read Martin Heidegger, who understands that, that the knowledge is, Dasein is knowledge, and knowledge is worldhood of the world, and worldhood of the world, is therefore worldness of the world, So unless and until, that is understood, there would be no, let us say liberation, so we are liberated on account of this world only, And on the other hand, while we read Upanishads, then they say, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm, so realize, realize yourself, realize all the different objects of this world completely and fully, unless and until flower, unless and until you have the capacity or capability or ability to appreciate the beauty of a flower, you would understand that there is a gap still, and you cannot communicate. The fact of the matter is that you cannot communicate, So ultimately, while Upanishad says Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm, they are, in a way, enabling us to understand that communication, of external and internal, between external and internal, has to be complete in nature, nothing is wanting, And that is also, the development of philosophy we can understand, in Martin Heidegger, wherein Dasein, is the worldhood of this world, worldliness of the world, or noetic and noemic, because in Husserl, understand that we are transcended.
எங்கிட்ட சொல்லணும் இல்லையா?
We are
எதனா பிரச்சனை நாங்க
transcended
எதுக்கு உட்கார்ந்துட்டு இருக்கோங்க?
on
எங்கிட்ட சொல்ல
account of our
படிக்கிறது
successful understanding of this world. We are transcendence. He would speak of transcendence not from empirical, apparent to real, but he would speak of transcendence, from apparent to real, that is held in this world, So when we have totality of joy, of course, for the time being only, we understand that there is a transcendence, So noetic and noemic, and for itself and in itself, Sartrean categorization of, the matter, would therefore be banking upon such a situation. If Brahm is everywhere, then why is it not that, I always proceed to realize that, in all the different objects, So inside the hotel, I can understand that there is the food, inside the restaurant, I can understand that there is the food that is delicious, then I should eat with great success, because in that case, I will understand that eating well, happens to be the best revenge, So to that extent, I would understand that I'm in a position to eat well. So you see, the thing is that Upanishadic, influences, are wide, and very pervasive, Now Nietzsche, one of the other modern European philosophy, one of the modern European philosophers, would similarly, make it out that, what is needed, is the achievement of something that is beyond good and evil, Look at this thing, something that is neither, good nor an evil, but something that is beyond, being good and beyond being evil. And that something, therefore, is Brahm, that exists in the form of supreme consciousness, with qualities and without qualities. And there, once again, our approach to the doctrine of Maya, would become more meaningful and more consequential, in nature. What I understand, but is a difficult doctrine, what I understand. And most of the Western, interpreters of Maya, are wrong, in conceding illusion, to the idea of Maya. Maya is not illusion, rather is a fact, is the thought logocentric, what I should like to understand in terms of Maya is that logocentric, because supreme consciousness, creates each of us, after his own image, and therefore, Upanishad would say, world is a phantasmagoria dancing on the fabric, universe. Dancing on the fabric of dancing on the fabric of divine, and further, we can understand that phantasmagoria, dancing on the fabric of divine, and universe is held in the nature of absolute. Two things are very important. And then so successfully we can understand the thing being, mm, mm, why the Heidegger, why ultimately Heidegger, and why Husserl or Sartre, and Nietzsche for the matter of that, every now and then he speaks of, seeing the limitations, of this world, that they should like to have, solace, satisfaction, in thinking of the other world that is beyond neither good, evil. While Nietzsche speaks of evil, then at once, we understand that he is speaking, in terms of the multiple nature of experience that brings about division and contradiction. He speaks of good, then once again we understand that it is still something of indulgence, we are speaking of something of infatuation, but while he speaks of a situation that is beyond being good and evil, but there we would understand that true realization, bliss therefore in the form of anand, is at once, and that therefore is something possible when we take a recourse to experience, and then we proceed to realize the experience on account of shravan, chintan and manan, shravan, chintan and manan. Nothing objective is needed, nothing of fact is needed, nothing of analysis is needed. What is needed is therefore is having a transcendence into something that is within, something that is deep within, something that is deepest within, and something that is far deeper within, and something that is farthest within. When we have a transcendence, then according to Nietzsche, we will understand that it would be possible to arrive at, that unique state of existence, that we have, stated being, Brahm, Brahm, that is supreme. So, in fact, the emphasis, we can understand in terms of, the propositions, which are held, in Indian, philosophy, wherein, and in Indian philosophy is really very vast, very profound, very systematic, and very organized. To say nothing of Vedas and Upanishads, we can understand that there are systems of philosophy, Nyaya, Sankhya, Mimamsa, so on and so forth, wherein, we are in a position to understand that, it is all, our ability to successfully and correctly understand the experience, and then we can proceed to thought and thinking, In Sankhya philosophy, for the matter of that, attention is invited to Prakriti and Purush, but it would be once again, two supreme forms of consciousness, In the first place, we have Prakriti, and in the second place, we have Purush. But union of Prakriti and Purush, would be an impossibility unless and until it is governed, in accordance with the necessity by such, gunas as, Sattva, Raj and Tam, So it is unique, on the part of Sankhya system of philosophy, to have stated, to have brought about such a consideration of the matter, So primarily, there are two things, which we can take up for examination, First is, Western philosophy has so successfully, utilized, Upanishadic distinction between, formed and formless, and since, Plato, it has acquired, the shape of categorization in the form of appearance and reality, but afterwards, Martin, in the modern European philosophy, Martin Heidegger, Edmund Husserl, and Jean-Paul Sartre, would understand that such a situation, is a situation that is to be understood in the context of this world, what we call evolution, what we call progress, expansion, so on and so forth, is to be understood only in the context. If we have understood the fullness of this world, completeness of this world, aham annam, aham annada, aham asmi prathmaja rathasya nabhav. So that is to be understood, fullness, so then the other world would proceed, So that possibility is being worked out, so well and so successfully, you see. In fact, in Ishopanishad, right at the beginning, the aphorism once again, would be established in the form of a Mahavakya, and it would state that Isha Vashamidam Sarvam Yatkim Jagatyam Jagat. Just have a consideration of the observation, Isha Vashamidam Yatkim Jagatyam Jagat. You see, Isha Vashamidam Yatkim Sarvam Jagatyam Jagat, So this is the Mahavakya, and here, ultimately the principle of eternity, immortality and continuity is established, Brahm, is, you see, seer of seeing, knower of knowing, hearer of hearing, mover of moving, and not affected by beginning and end, but it creates, it creates, and to that extent, it would insist that, there is, an effort to come up to the, you see, expectations of creation, and to be the best and to be the greatest and to be the highest, but therefore with expectations, life, therefore has been given, by supreme to us, and then, but it is not in vain that life is given, rather it is born out of expectations that, we shall be in a position to shoulder so successfully, and having shouldered, we should prove ourselves being competent, competent enough to be, to have been called, the men and women of this world, and to that extent, we can understand the relevance of the observation, So first requirement, the necessity, and in fact, we can directly understand, we can trace the influence of such an observation, on at least on these three philosophers, who just take up the first part of the observation, wherein, the aphorism would state that, ultimately each of us, each of the creatures of this world, is born out of expectations, born through expectations and into the expectations, they are always born, and expectations are expectations, they must be come to terms with, we must be square with the expectations, and to that extent, we would understand, that we have, you see, we have created finer, wider, greater and better meanings on account of our lives, in this world. So that is there, but the thing is that subject matter is really very vast, and in a little time such as this, it would be a little difficult, but we can make a beginning, we can establish bearings, and we can also, make a new start, we can make a fresh start, time and again, we can understand that, there is a need to establish new bearing, unless and until categories of appreciation, are new, and accordingly we are in a position to impose, new standards of enjoyment, on the things being read, understood, and imparted by us, we will understand that we are not precisely, coming to terms with what Ishopanishad would say, Isha Vashamidam Yatkim Sarvam Jagatyam Jagat, So that therefore is the thing. But what I understand, is that, you see, this is one of the things to be understood, with proud Indians, we must have the capability, to say that ultimately, philosophy begins, you see, and through Upanishads, Brahma Sutra and Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Vedas, it went to the Western world, So Eastern heritage, what the point that I should like to prove, with authority and conviction is that, they at no point of time, they should forget or they are capable of forgetting their Eastern heritage, that is so true of Western religions, but that would be a separate area of investigation, Western religions, have derived themselves from, canonical, Rig Veda, Vedas for the matter of that, and at a later stage, of course, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Upanishad is standing in between, So that is a separate area of investigation, but now you see, briefly towards the end, some of the important observations. I should like to humbly, bring to your consideration certain important observations, which would appear in the form of Mahavakyas in Upanishads, and from such Mahavakyas, we are always in a position to understand or settle down the question of influence of Upanishads on Western knowledge systems. So first is, you see, what would appear in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and there, it would state with great conviction, that Dve Vau, Brahmano Rupe, Dve Vau, Brahmano Rupe. You see, Murtam Cha, Amurtam Cha, Martyam Cha, Amartam Cha, Sthitam Cha, Yak Cha, Sak Cha, Tyak. This I have already spoken, being formed and founded. There are two modes of, the varieties, of existence of Brahma. One is formed and one is formless, of course, and the other is formed, So this, therefore, is the seminal injunction, that would become a basis of, the argumentation, being held, right now, you see. And the second important observation, that would appear once again in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad would be like this: Tasya hetasya pursasya rupam yatha Maharaj namam vasha. So this, therefore, Maharaj, and so the supreme consciousness, that exists in the form of Brahma. So that is there, and very important, for our understanding. While we read Plato, then we understand one important observation. I should like to quote. I will read out for the matter of that from Plato. He says in Phaedrus, one of the dialogues, attributed to Plato, and there he would say, of the nature of the soul. Just have a look at. I'm quoting from him, Phaedrus. Of the nature of the soul, though her true form be ever a theme of large and more than mortal discourse. This is very important. Of the nature of the soul, though her true form be ever a theme of large and more than mortal discourse, let me speak briefly and in a figure, and let the figure be composite, a pair of winged horses and a charioteer. The soul in her totality has the care of inanimate being everywhere and traverses the whole heaven in diverse forms, appearing when perfect and fully winged, she
Congratulations.
word and orders
ಅದೇ
the
ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ ಅಂತಾರೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಇನ್ನೂ
whereas the imperfect soul, losing her wings and drooping in her flight, at last settles on the solid ground there. Finding a home, she receives an earthly frame, which appears to be self-moved, but is really moved by her power. And this composition of soul and body is called a living and mortal creature, so on and so forth, So, and Aristotle similarly, in one of his discourses would say, and God is in a better state and life also belongs to God, for the actuality of thought is life. That is very, God is actuality and actuality of thought therefore is life. And God is that actuality, that is there, Brahm, that is actual, and God's self-dependent actuality is life's most good. and eternal. We say therefore that God is a living being, eternal, most good, so that life, and duration, continuous and eternal, belongs to God, for this is God. So we can proceed to take into consideration, these observations, and since I have already stated, that is a area of inquiry, investigation, that is, really very vast, and accordingly, we can just, but a few more, just one more observation, from being and nothingness, I should like to read out to prove the contention that ultimately Sarvam Khalvidam Brahm, and Aham Brahm Ashmi, are precisely the foundations, through which Martin Heidegger raises, the superstructure of being and nothingness. One of the celebrated, texts written by him, wherein, he would introduce Dasein, in the place of conventional being, and would therefore, develop his philosophy. He would say, just see, I quote from him, this comes from being and nothingness. He would say the explanation of the world by means of becoming, conceived as a synthesis of being, and non-being, is easily given. But it must be noted that being in becoming could be this synthesis, and only if it were so to itself in an act which would establish own nothingness. If already I am no longer what I was, it is still necessary that I have to be so in the unity of annihilating synthesis, which I myself sustain in being. Otherwise, I would have no relation of any sort with what I am no longer.
You are not audible. Hello.
Yes, just wait for a few minutes. I think there is network issues on the side.
Oh, okay. Right, sir.
Am I heard?
Yeah, there was some connection issue, sir, in
Right,
between,
right.
but now audible.
Am I right? So what I should like to say towards the end is the fact that it would be always, possible to have a kind of assessment of a safe and secure influence and privileged influence, for the matter of that, Upanishads, have exercised on the development of Western aesthetics and philosophy, and what ultimately one needs, is to have sympathy, and the same, because ultimately sympathy, is something that brings about promotion of understanding, and it also enables us to enjoy, certain facts, which have not been investigated so properly, but required, to be investigated, because knowledge, therefore, as Upanishads would say, is eternal, Vayur anilam amritam mathedam bhashmantam shariram krito ismar kritam ismar. Eternity of knowledge, therefore, is enjoined upon the prayers, which seers are mounting on Supreme, for liberation. So that therefore is something I should like to say towards the end of my deliberation on the matter, and is now open, the discussion is now open, because
Okay.
discussion is ultimately discussion only to the extent that it is Shastrat. So it is now.
So if someone has any question, can go ahead with one's question. You can ask your questions if you have any discussion you want. Any question?
Sir, good morning, sir. Very nice, nicely interpreted and executed talk by Honorable Sir. Sir, my request to you, in this new education policy, why these concepts aren't being incorporated on a wider scale so that we need to get a proper look
Yes,
at the
right,
history
right.
of our country, sir. मतलब सर बार बार बात होती है इन सब चीजों की, एक मतलब आप जिस ढंग से आपने बात की सर, रियली मतलब कोटि कोटि प्रणाम आपको सर। और यही रिक्वेस्ट है सर, इन सब चीजों को जब तक हम सर अपने करिकुलम में इनकॉर्पोरेट नहीं कर पाएंगे तब तक सर इन चीजों का
हाँ,
एक
बिल्कुल
जो पेनिट्रेशन है सर वो नहीं हो पाएगा।
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
सो रियली थैंकफुल टू यू सर, मतलब
Thank you very much.
नो वर्ड्स टू से एनीथिंग।
Thank you very much.
थैंक यू सर।
Anybody else? If
May
no
I, sir?
question- Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, as you said, Brahma is a supreme consciousness.
Right,
This is above than good and evil.
right.
Right? So I feel we call God, Ishwar, Brahm,
Right.
Bhagwan. This is reality.
Yes.
This is not illusion.
Yes. Right.
So just I want to listen again. The can we define Ishwar, God, because it is reality.
Uh-huh.
So I want to listen brief definition of this Brahma or Ishwar. Over from my side, sir. Hello.
Some connection issue. So wait,
Okay.
he got disconnected. Sir, am I audible? Got disconnected. Yes, sir. It
Right.
had got disconnected.
Yes, yes. So in fact, what I should like to say is that is an experience, West would concede the fact that God is a fact, and to that extent, it would accord a kind of objective status, to the existence of God. But our own tradition, would suggest that God is an experience, and experience is only capable of being realized through intuition, So for that, we will have to enter into the experience, just look at one simple example, I talked about cosmic dance,
Right.
that would appear, wherein it would be said, aham annam, annam. And then go on chanting, aham annam, aham annam, aham annam, aham annam. aham annam, aham annam, aham annam, aham annam, aham annam, aham annam. And then chant aham annadah, 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 aham. And see the transcendence, see the effect, you know. If devotion, you know, is understood, then consequently, you know, you would be in a position to see the effect, you know. That would be remarkable, you know. Aham mannada, aham mannada, aham mannada, aham mannada, aham annada, aham annada, aham mannada, aham mannada, aham asmi pratmaja rathasya nabhav, you know. So rathasya nabhav. So then, you know, having chanted for umpteenth times, you know, you would understand that it is possible to come to terms with the realization of Supreme. And it is open for practice, you know. Yoga ultimately, you know, enables us to understand. But what we need, you know, as I have told you, Shravan, you know, Chintan and Manan, you know. So we have, for the matter of that, hymnal songs, you know. We have shlokas, you know, and then what is insisted upon, you know, is that, you know.
You mean Sravan, Manan, Chintan, then we can get the realization of God. Thank you so much, sir. Again disconnected, I think.
Yeah, there is some issue with his internet
Some
connection.
issue is there. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you share, sir, even contact number or email ID for further communication?
Yeah,
with
yeah, sure.
Sir, we can get.
Sure. Yeah, I have shared his email ID. So those who are interested,
Thank you so much, sir.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, some connection issue
Yes, yes.
is persisting.
That is there for, you know.
Yeah. So if no other question, okay, we'll go ahead with thanking sir. Thank you very much, sir, for this insightful and engaging talk. I'm sure participants have gained a lot from this talk. They asked for your email ID also, so I have shared with them. If someone is interested in discussing something or sending one's inquisition, can mail to you. Thank you very much, sir, again.
Thank you very much.
Again
Thank
for
you. Thank you.
accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Pankaj, you can end this session.